So I am in Portland, Oregon, and I'm here visiting my son and my daughter and their families. And my son just had a baby named Etta, and it's my first time here. And I'm talking quietly because my daughter and her husband are sleeping in the back. But being a grandmother is so much harder than being a mom. You worry the same about the children, but you don't have control over keeping them safe. You don't have control over the day-to-day decisions as to how to keep them safe. You have all this knowledge from having raised two children, but unless your children ask for it, you don't get to share that knowledge. And when you offer it up without them asking for it, it's not always well recepted. So you do the best you can and share as much advice as you possibly can. But I find that I am more worried about the world out there than my immediate nest, because I'm not the one that's actually parenting in the nest. I am the one that's supposed to make sure that the outside world is safe for those children. And I am aware of every little danger. Homeless people on the street, I used to feel really sad for them, and for a long time I would feed them. I documented them with my photography. I tried different ways of helping them, none of which worked. When I joined the Red Cross, I was able to actually, given 2 weeks, put 199 people back to work and with permanent housing, which gave me this huge life learned lesson of how to actually help for real, not just give $1 when you're passing them by the street, but to actually get them back into society. And it seemed so easy. 2 weeks, 199 people. And if we had that knowledge this whole time, then why haven't we put all these people back to work? And so I have all of these problems that I see out in the world, and they are now met with, instead of compassion and this thing of, just trying to do the best you can, I have this urge that it has to be fixed before these kids get out in the world. I drive by in Portland and there are buildings covered in graffiti. There are tents strewn everywhere, in every neighborhood, on the side of the street. Campers and people living out of cars, and it's almost worse than it was in Mexico. In fact, I find that it is worse than when I was driving through Mexico. And I've realized that my country has become a third world country, and it's not the world that I brought my kids into, or at least it's not the world that I recognize. And that fills me with fear, because my children are bringing children into this. We have an FDA that's supposed to keep products that are not safe for consumption off the shelves. They're the ones that are responsible for making sure that the poisonous apple tree is not in the garden, and they're not doing their job. We've got governments that are getting tons and tons of money, and I didn't see one police officer in downtown Portland, but I saw lots of people tagging buildings, lots of people committing low-level crimes, and nobody cared about it. Those low-level crimes, those are committed mostly by children, teenagers, or older teenagers, and young adults. And these are the people that my grandchildren are going to be walking side by side with. They're the ones that are going to be influencing them probably more than their parents as they get older. And that's not acceptable. When I got to Atlanta on that plane, actually before I got to Atlanta, when the captain came out and asked me where I wanted to land the plane, because we had so many medical emergencies on board, I couldn't believe that I was being asked where to land a plane. Suddenly I had been put into a position of knowing more than everybody else as to what it needed to happen. And although I made a great decision on returning to Atlanta instead of landing in the two islands with that many sick people on board, once I landed, again, I felt like I was put in this position where I knew more than everybody else, and I had always been in a world where the world knew way more than I did, way more. And suddenly people were relying on me as if I knew more than the world did. And I wasn't comfortable with that. I didn't feel like my knowledge was large enough or big enough to be able to be in that role. And there is safety and security when the world knows more than you, when the world is more competent than you. It's like being in a father's arms when you're little. And all of a sudden, the little girl was being asked what to do. As a grandmother, I'm supposed to know everything for this child, and I don't. I don't know what the solutions are, but I know that we're not working on them. Not the way we should. We're throwing money at the problem, but not actually solving it, which I did for a long time. I would feed them. I would take them, the homeless people, I would take them to McDonald's. I would bring clothes. I would try and help them. And that wasn't what they needed. It wasn't the clothes that they needed. It wasn't the food that they needed. What they needed was a way of getting back into society and a way of providing for themselves on a regular basis. They needed self-confidence. They needed IDs so that they could access that system. They needed the confidence on getting those IDs. They needed the confidence of being able to go out and do a job interview. And I saw how to do that when I was with the Red Cross. But I'm not qualified to go out on my own and start doing that with homeless people or through a system. But I know that we have a system. I know that there is a system of doing that where you can have somebody go from being homeless for 20 years to having 2 jobs and a place to stay. All you have to do is help them open the door. I have this mama bear nesting instinct that is so huge right now. My daughter pregnant, my son having just given birth to his second. My nesting instincts and my protective instincts of these kids is so ginormous. I didn't think that I would go through a hormonal nesting phase or protective phase, but it is almost impossible to ignore. I don't know how to handhold the world so that it can navigate this part of its development, but I know that if you are a city out there and you are looking for a solution to your problems in homelessness, I do have some answers for that, and I have ways of training people that can handhold these people, not handhold them, but check in with them on a daily basis, giving them small, tiny things to accomplish in getting an ID. Well, why didn't you get an ID? Well, I don't have transportation. So we have a bus system. I'm not familiar with the bus. I have never ridden the bus. Well, here's your tokens for the day. Just go ride the bus for a whole day. This is an actual case that we did. Just go ride the bus for a whole day. Here's tokens. Just get on the bus and ride all day long so that you're comfortable with it. And the next day, take that bus and go get your ID. And the next day, let's get your social security card. Let's get you an address at the PO, at the post office. All of these things are tiny steps, but they can seem insurmountable when you're homeless. And having somebody help you navigate the thinking on, okay, well, why haven't I done this? And then breaking that down into small steps so that they can accomplish that, and checking back in with them on a daily basis, making them accountable. This is their life. And if you know absolutely 100% that they can have a job and a place to stay in a matter of a couple of weeks, they're going to feed off of that confidence. They're going to know, hey, I can do this. This is actually possible. In 2 weeks, I could be living in an apartment. We have to solve these issues. I know that they're issues that people have been working on for a long time, but we have to solve them now. And whatever I need to do in order to help get those problems solved, that's my job now as a grandma. So we need to come up with a grandma group that, now that you're grandmas and you're nesting, so that we can actually solve these problems and get them taken care of one problem at a time. It is not okay to watch a tagger tag a building. It is not okay to watch a government let people erect tent cities instead of saying, hey, what's going on with you? Why haven't you got an ID? Why don't you have a job? Why don't you have housing? If you're living in a city where in order to get housing, you have to be making $30 an hour, that's not okay. Housing should be equivalent to, there should be some sort of housing. If you're working at minimum wage, you should have somebody that's working at minimum wage be able to afford some type of housing. You can't be having a job that makes $18 an hour and not be able to afford a trailer or something. That's not okay. If a city has priced out their housing where people that are working at minimum wage can't live there, then you've got a problem. You've got a big problem. And if you're not training people who don't have jobs to have a skilled labor job, you've got another problem. These community colleges, we have a workforce solutions in Virginia. Those need to be tailored to these homeless people. These homeless, agencies need to have access to those college programs so that all of these people that don't have jobs, that can't afford housing, are automatically eligible to take the 1-year course and have some type of dorm type setting so that they can live for that year that they're being trained before they get a job. There has to be a system, not for you to take care of someone, but for you to make sure that people can take care of themselves. That's so important. So important. So, anyway, those are my thoughts today.